What if I told you Bricks and Elementor are actually more similar than you may think? In this video, we are going to focus on the similarities between Bricks and Elementor, and the reason why is because I learned something new last week. I did a live stream with Reno from Living with Pixels, and I had a single mission, and that was to show him the power of bricks and to get him to see the light, but I failed in my mission. And that is because I approached it all wrong. I dove straight into all the advanced stuff that makes bricks so powerful. The classes, the conditions, pseudos, and even powerful frameworks like ACSS and core frameworks. I learned that jumping into the deep end isn't the best way for web designers and Elementor users to learn and get introduced to such a powerful builder. That's why we are going to rewind and we're going to start from the beginning, taking a first step approach. We got Elementor on the left, bricks on the right. Let's start in the back end with our settings because this is where we usually start our projects at. Both have settings. You're going to want to go through them. Bricks will have a lot more inside of their settings section, where Elementor does have theirs spread out in different places, like right here, our role manager. But look at what is similar. For example, we have our builder access. That is going to be similar to Role Manager. Over here in our settings, you'll see in advanced something like disable Google Fonts. You're going to find similar settings here inside of Bricks. We're going to have our form submissions inside Bricks. We have our submissions inside of Elementor. We also have our custom fonts and our custom fonts here. They're all going to be added pretty much the same way. A lot of our settings and setup are going to be very similar. Also for everything that is default WordPress. Let's go ahead and add a page here. And you can see our default, the way that we are adding pages. I'm going to call this one Elementor. I'll call this one Bricks. And then we could publish or save to draft. I'm just going to publish it. Make it easy. Publish both of them. And then we would just select on edit to edit the front end. And just about everything WordPress related is going to be the same. Posts, menus, comments, settings, all that stuff. Another big similarity are going to be the templates. In Elementor, we have our theme builder. Inside of Bricks, we got our templates. When we add it inside of Elementor, let's add one. We're going to be able to add in our footer, header, our single posts, our archives, 404, and so on. We're going to be able to do the same thing here inside of Bricks. When we add a new one, we have all the building options that we really need, our header, footer, our single, which is our single post, our archive, our pop-up, error page, which is a 404, and then we just use display conditions to connect them. Like right here, say I want to create a header. I'll create a header here. Let's edit, let's publish this. Edit with Elementor. I'm going to do the same here. Create a header. I'm going to call this one header. I'm going to call it 2 because I already got some headers in my Elementor site. Let's say I just want to add in my menu here. In Bricks, let me add a very similar widget. Here is my WordPress menu. I'm going to add in a nav menu here, and they're going to work very similar. Let's take a look at this. We have the option to choose our menus. Same thing over here in the WordPress menu. We choose which menu we want to use. So if we got multiple menus, and then we could go on and style them. For Elementor, we would add a condition. We can make it the entire site. We could also make it more granular. Let's say we just want to give it to a singular page, and we just save and close, setting up our condition. But most of the time, it is going to be the entire site. We're going to do actually the same thing inside of Bricks by going over here to the settings icon. And then we're going to go to our template settings, add in the condition, and that condition is going to be for the entire site. And then for the rest of the theme building, like footer, posts, archives, we're all going to do the same thing for both Bricks and Elementor. Let's go back to the Elementor and Bricks page. I'm going to select on edit with Elementor and edit with Bricks. When you get to Elementor, the next thing you're going to want to do after setting up your backend settings always is to set up your front end settings. And you have two of them. You have your site settings, and then you have your page settings. Inside of Bricks, you're going to have the same. They're just going to have different labels. We're going to go up over here to our settings, and you'll see your page settings. And then you'll see your theme settings. And the theme settings are like your site settings inside of Elementor. The big difference is you have to create yours because you could actually add multiple site settings or theme settings to your Bricks website. I'm going to call this one just Bricks theme and create. Let's go over here to our site settings in Elementor and take a look. All right, inside Elementor, you got your global colors, global fonts. You're always going to want to style these up first and get those dialed in because it's going to make the rest of building your website smooth. Then you're going to want to go through and set up the rest. I normally don't really play around with a theme style. I focus more on my design system. That's just the way I work inside of the builder. But you do want to set up your regular settings, especially when it comes to your layout. You want to dial in your content width. For example, I like to normally keep mine at 80 rem, or that is 1280 pixels. I also like to change my content padding, take away the default, and most importantly, give the gap. Here are the areas I will set up and that are all similar to Elementor. First, the general. I will set up my site background. Now, I would also want to set up like what I did here in Elementor with my content width. This is going to be found down here inside your element container. Now, think of it as a container, same thing inside Elementor. You have containers. So your container is wrapping the content. Here is where you're going to fix your width. So I'm going to fix mine at the same 80 rem, and we're going to keep it similar as well. Now you could go more granular and start to set up a few more things to make your process a lot quicker, but let's keep it basic for right now and focus on the similarities. We got our gaps, just like what we got here, 1.25. This is set at rem. We're going to do the same thing here. The only thing is you have to type in rem afterwards if you want to use rem, or it'll use pixel by default. And now our settings are the same as far as our layouts. Next up, let's take a look at the colors. We got our colors here. We could add in a new one. Like here is a new color. You could build your palette right here, which you always want to do to start off, and you could label it, all that good stuff. Here inside of Bricks, you will want to go click on any one of these. That's going to pull up your color palette. So I got one here that I was playing around with. But let's go here and select on Create Color Palette. This is where you're going to get started building this right here, like what you have inside of Elementor. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this New Colors. All right, I'm going to keep it really simple. I am going to select on Create. And now from here, I can choose which color palette I want to use. Again, it does exactly what Elementor does, just adds a bit more. I'm going to select on new colors. Now I can start to build my color palette. Let me go with something like a dark blue here, and I'm going to select on save. Now I'm starting to build my palette the way that I want. Let me get a white color here. Let me save that, and let me get something black as well. Okay, I'll just get straight up black. Okay, we got that. We could even edit it. We could change the names, and we could stylize it, customize it, build out our palette. I found a good way to understand these at first is just to think of them as our globals, just like what we have as our global colors here. The final thing to set up in Elementor would be our global fonts. We're going to do the same inside of Bricks. It is done differently and has a different name. It's called classes, but it is the same methodology, just the same approach. Think of your classes as your globals. I found in last week's stream, this is the area that can get overcomplicated, so we're going to simplify it. Let's add in a text and let's turn this text into a global. This is a heading widget. Let me also exit out of here so we can see how it's done in Elementor, and hopefully this will make a lot more sense. Okay, in Elementor, we could go to our style, and you'll see two global options. First one is going to be the color. You could pick your global color, and then your typography, which we set up in the site settings. Inside Bricks, however, we are going to use our class to set up the global, which is this field up here at the top. Let's go in here and give it a name. I'm going to call this one header, and I'm going to call it header XL. This is for an extra large header for my banner. Save it. And then when you hover over it, you'll see this unlocked icon. With your global in here, aka your class, and the icon unlocked, we can now set it up. Let's go to our typography. The settings are all, again, going to be very similar to Elementor. We could choose from our global colors. We could put in our font sizes. I'll give it a 5 rem. Then we could set up the rest of our settings, again, all similar. Even the font family, you'll see here, custom fonts is at the top. If I want to do the same here inside of Elementor, I could go to typography, and you could do this one inside of your global typography. You'll have that option, but you'll see here at the top, custom fonts again. Similarities, there's so many similarities. And then from here, we could also style it up for mobile as well. We have our responsive mode up here. Let me change this all the way down to mobile. I'll give this a 3 rem. Let's take it back to desktop. And then you'll see the breakpoints. This is the same as in Elementor. Now let's finish up this global typography. And I'm taking a little time here because I know this is where it could get a bit confusing. But for just reference to see how they both are, we have my header XL right here inside of Elementor. I went in and I hit all my settings, I set it up, and I even do it for mobile, making it responsive. And if I ever wanted to edit this global, I would just edit inside of the global. To set this up and finalize it inside of Bricks, you do the same, you finish all your settings, and then you lock it. Once it's locked, you see you can't edit anything because they don't want you messing up your global style, aka your class. Okay, let's undo this one. Now we have our global connected here. Let's say I want to add another header. I just go here, I search for that global style, aka class, apply it, and now we have our global styles. So we're able to create global typography. They're just applied differently. Now, where this really starts to get interesting is the way that we created our global or class for our headers, and we do the same for all of our text. Well, we could do that for anything inside of Bricks. We could do that for our sections, for any elements, our buttons, and then you just start creating more of these globals, but those globals are just called classes. I don't want to dig too deep into that because I know that's where it gets a little bit confusing. This is a good start though right here, just to get a preview on what could be done. Now, let's go to the next area, and that is going to be our sections and containers. In Elementor, we got our container and grid. Inside of Bricks, we got our section, container, block, and div. Let's simplify this and take a look at the similarities. Let's drop in a container. By default, it's on Flexbox or just Flex. You could also change this to a grid. Let's do the same inside of Bricks. We're always going to start off with a section. In fact, if I were to make this a bit smaller right here, let's say if I make this just have a width of 600 pixels, you're going to see that there is this gray dotted box right here. You got the section, which is the pink outline, and then you got a container inside of that section. The thing is, they're just put together. The container wraps the content, the section just covers everything and wraps all of it. When you drop in the section here for Bricks, it automatically plugs in the container, so you have both of them that you can style. And I know it's a little bit small zoomed in here, but if you look at the container, you can see it's just hugging around the content. That is at 80 rem width that we set up in the very beginning. And then the section is going to wrap around everything. Usually the section, this is where I would add in my padding and spacing. Right here, when we go to style, up at the top, we have our padding. Now, the cool thing about this is this has a little bit of a better way of adding it. You can link it top and bottom, left and right. I'm going to make this 10 rem. And on the sides, I'm going to make it 2 rem. Back over here in Elementor, you're just going to do it on the outer. You're going to go to your padding. Let me change this to rem, and I'll put in the same values. This is also where you would go in and add your background color or background images. I'll put a color here. You can put an image as well. And then let me add that in there for, say, like our banner. And then we're going to do the same thing here inside of Bricks. Very, very similar. You're just going to go to your background. You could choose a color, or you could go ahead and, well, you see the yellow dot. This makes it easy to turn off the style. We could go back to the background and add in an image. Setting up our image styles, also very similar inside of Elementor. Choose your resolution, your position. I usually put center, repeat, set to no repeat, display. We could put cover. Do the same here inside of Bricks. We put it on full. There are more options, but you could just skip over those options. Stick to the ones that you're familiar with. Position, let's go to center, no repeat, and then cover. But now let's take a look at something we use a lot inside of Elementor, and that's going to be our flex controls. Here in the layout, you're going to see all of our controls right here for the flex box. This is a way that we align our content inside of here. Like, let's drop in a header. Well, if we go back, we can start to align this in different places, and it's very important to get familiar and used to using these flex controls. And we have the same inside of Bricks. You go to the container though. This time you want to go to the container wrapping the content, to your content, and then here you're going to see again the flex controls. So if you are familiar with these and working very well with them inside of Elementor, you got them down, you are going to find using the flex controls inside of Bricks so similar that it's going to be just about seamless using them. If you are new to using these flex controls, well, it's going to have a learning curve just like it does inside of Bricks. And then another big similarity when it comes to your containers, that's going to be the inner container. So let's say here I want to create an inner container to wrap some content. That way I could, change something inside of the design. You just add in a container, and it turns into an inner container inside of Elementor. If we go here to Bricks, we do the same. The only thing is you're not going to add a container, you're going to add a block. And these blocks, just think of them as inner containers like what you would have inside of Elementor. Bricks is actually using the correct terminology, but I don't want to get too deep into semantics right here because the whole thing is just getting a good understanding of all this. So we got our block, and our block is going to act as our inner container. Let's create new sections to take a look at the most common widgets and elements we use building the site. You're going to see how very similar all of these are. I'm going to add in a new section over here. I'm not going to worry about all the styling up. I'm going to go over here to add a new section as well. And then let's go to our elements or our widgets. You're going to see most of these are the same. You got your heading, your text editor, your button, your image icon. We have the same over here. The only thing is it's like maybe for basic text and rich text, those have a bit of differences. One is a bit more basic. The other one will have your WYSIWYG. You could pick and choose what you want to use. Everything is just so very similar, just with a lot more granular options to it. You got your button. In the button, you're going to see your links. You'll be able to add your links. It all works the same, even like open new tab. And then your styling also works the same. First off, you go to your layout. You set up your padding inside of your button. Say if I just wanted this to be 1 RAM. Let's say I want this one to be massive. I'm going to put 60 RAM just to be visible. So you would set up your padding here. You would go to your background. You would set it up inside of your background. Your typography, go ahead and give it a color. And it's not centered because I didn't add in all of my values here. But you get the picture. This is just a way to set it up where if you were to add a button in here, you would go through, add in your links. It's a bit more simplified for sure, but just look for what is similar. Those are the basic elements, but we got a lot more as well because we could go over here and look for things like the icon box, which are also going to be very similar. Most of the time when building a site, only stick with those primary elements or widgets, and they're going to be very similar across both. Now, let's take a look at a couple other things that are important. One is going to be the loop grid. Let's type it in. Loop. Okay, we got our loop grid. Now, our loop grid in Elementor, we go in, create a template, and then we build it out. Let's go ahead and save it. Let's just drop in a heading, and in our heading, we're going to go to our dynamic tags. Now, this is another similarity as well, dynamic tags. And we're going to go down and we are going to find our post title so it's connected dynamically. Let's save and go back. And I have a bunch of just like fake blog posts that are just fillers on both websites. Bricks also has a loop. It is done a little bit differently, but it's the same function. And also the dynamic tags, a way to get started, are also very similar. Let me add a section. Inside the container, we're going to add a block. And this block is basically going to be my loop grid. To activate it, I'm going to go here to where it says query loop. I'm going to activate this, and now it has turned into a loop. Just like what we did with Elementor, you start adding in your elements, your title for your blog post title, your images for featured images, and so on. Let's add in a header. I'm going to add in a title, and you're going to see a loops now, but we need to set up the dynamic tag, just like what we did inside of Elementor. For this, you have the dynamic data, just different labels. That's all it is, but the same fundamentals. Let's click on it and select on post title, and you'll see now it turns into the post titles and it loops it. Back over here to our block, which is acting as our loop grid, we have the option to select and set everything up, like how many posts per page. I only want to do 4 of them. We do the same thing inside Elementor. We go to our loop grid, and then we have our options like how many do we want. And let's say I just want 4 also in here. I just want 1 column. Now we have the same exact thing, and the fundamentals and the principles align a lot. They overlap a lot. This is just the beginning. As you go through it, you'll find a lot more similarities. You'll notice I skipped over a whole lot. There's so much more to bricks, but instead of focusing on everything that could be done, instead, let's start by looking at what you could do that is similar, that you could relate to, that you could understand and comprehend, because you start there and you can start building up and learning from there. And it's a great way to progress and add a new skill to your skill set. If you're just getting started with bricks, have fun. Start with what you are familiar with and then just keep learning. And I have to say this, I am not advocating for anybody to leave Elementor or to switch Elementor for bricks or another builder. In fact, it's the contrary. I do not believe in that. I believe in my philosophy, which is to master one thing at a time, then move on to the next and master that. This way we could build our skill stacks. If you are brand new to Elementor and just learning it, continue learning and mastering it. When you feel like you are ready, then move on to another skill that you could add. I often get asked, are you leaving Elementor? And my answer is always no. It's a skill I've invested in that is inside of my skill stack. I just add in more with time and experience, and I encourage others to do the same. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.